Hi, I'm Num Num, and today I would like to talk to you about items and the basics of crafting. I have another channel, but it's in French. I've already published quite a few videos, mostly aimed at beginners or people who are discovering the game. But I think that even more experienced players can still discover a few things when watching these videos. Why do I want to start with items and crafting? Well, at least the basics of orbs and so on and currency is that in the future I will release other videos, and it's important to know the vocabulary. I mean, it's important to know how items work in general in Path of Exile, and to understand the terminology, because people will talk to you about implicits and mods and affixes and so on and so forth. And if you don't understand what we are talking about, then it's basically for nothing. It's all wasted. So another thing about items is that if you don't understand how they work, you can't really assess their value properly. You can't really understand builds and how to basically to find items, to know which items to buy and so on. It's going to make trading also a lot more complicated, crafting and so on. So that's why we are going to focus on that today. So the very first thing is that items come in various rarities. The first one is normal items, or so-called white items. You see, because the title up here is in white. So here I have several examples just to show you a little bit the basics. White items like this are the basis for crafting. That's why they are called bases in general. Apart from crafting, they can be useful if you want to use a knob of chance. I'll get to that later in the video. When they drop, they potentially have one implicit, so which is exactly what you're seeing here with the accuracy rating, which is tied to this base. So basically all the emerald rings in the game are going to have accuracy rating as an implicit. Why do I know it's an implicit? Because if I press the Alt key and I keep it pressed, I can see here that, well, here it's not very visible, sorry, I'm going to move, probably it's going to make it easier. Here it's written implicit, and I can see that I get plus 153, and here I have the range. I could have rolled, well, this item could have rolled between 120 and 160, and I rolled 153. Okay, so that's the example of a ring. Then you have weapons. Weapons are going to have a few more lines. You're going to see the type of weapon. So here it's a wand. Okay, all these items can have quality. I'm not going to talk about quality today. I'm going to talk about it in another video. Here you have also requirements. Like what is your level requirements, what is requirements for attributes. For example, here you need to have 178 of intelligence to be able to equip it. And for caster weapons like wands, you're going to get a skill here. So for example, here we get a level 18 power siphon skill, which can be useful. Sometimes you won't use this skill, sometimes you will. It depends. If you press Alt, as I was explaining, you can mouse over and you get the spell description. If I go to what is called a martial weapon, so a weapon that actually inflicts damage, here we see we have even more information like physical damage, or critical hit chance, or the base hit chance, how many attacks per second, and so on and so forth. So again, here this one, for example, has an implicit, which doesn't have a range. It's always bow attacks fire an additional arrow, and it's always one arrow. So that's it. Last type I wanted to showcase was armor. So here, for example, an helmet. Here you're going to have the base defense. So for example, this helmet has armor and evasion rating. If it has armor, it's going to have a strength requirement. If it has evasion rating, it's going to have a dexterity requirement. And if it has energy shield, it's going to have an intelligence requirement. So this base, for example, tell you that you need a certain amount of strength and dex. It will be directly linked to the class you play. Okay, so that's it for white items. One thing which I want to talk about right now as well is, as you have noticed, there was an item level and a requirement level, and that's two different things. So that's very important to differentiate between the two. The item level is used mostly for crafting, so I'm not going to get into that either today. You can pretty much forget about it for the moment. The requirement level is the level your character has to be. So for example here, to equip this ring, my character would have to be at least level 26. The item level 27 is only the type of mods that I could have on this item, so the type of lines and so on and so forth. Again, not talking about that today. One thing I want to say as well is that we are talking about Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile in general. There are always exceptions to everything I'm going to say in this video, but there are really small exceptions that you can probably ignore for the moment. But it just says that when I say it's always like that, well, yeah, pretty much, but there are always exceptions. Okay, now let's move on to the next type of next rarity of objects, which is magic objects, or so-called blue objects, because as you can guess, their name is written in blue. So these items start to have modifiers. So you see here, for example, this one has an implicit, which is tied to the base. So all the amethyst ring will have chaos resistance. And this one has one suffix. So as is usual in ARPGs, items can have modifiers, and these modifiers can be either a prefix or a suffix. It's just one way to organize groups of mods, basically. So prefix can only be certain modifiers and suffix can only be certain other modifiers. So it helps to organize them, basically. An item can only have at most 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. Right now this one has only one, it's a suffix. A blue item can have at most one of each, one prefix, one suffix. We'll see how we get to 3 later on. So this one, for example, has a suffix, and I can see it's plus 12 to dexterity, and I can see in a range of 9 to 12. What we notice is that something new has appeared. Here it's written T2. T2 means tier 2. So here tiers are organized starting with 1 at the lowest level, and then they go up. I'm not a big fan of this, I have to say, in PoE 2. It didn't used to be like that. In Path of Exile 1, it was not like this. T1 was the best level, best tier. And then it went down like this. Why was it better, in my opinion, is that you immediately knew that T1 was the best, basically. And if you had T2, you knew it was close to the best. But now, it doesn't really make sense, because some mods are going to have, for example, 2, 3, 4 tiers, and some others are going to have 13 tiers. So if you have something which is T4, well, maybe it's the best for a certain mod, but it's actually lousy for another one. And you have to know that, I mean, you have to learn that by heart, basically, or you have to check some website, so you need to get out of the game to check that. I really think it's a really bad idea. I really don't know why they have done that in PoE 2, because it's really a big loss, I would say. In any case, here we see it's T2, which is pretty basic. Another thing we see if we mouse over this T2 is that we see it's an attribute mod. So modifiers have tags like this. And this is going to be useful in the future for crafting, so I wanted to show it to you now so that you know where to find this information. You can also find it on the web, but at least you can find this information in the game as well. Okay. When you have a blue item like this, we see it as one suffix, so we know we can add one more mod, and it has to be a prefix, basically. We will see at the end of the video how to do that, but that's the way it works. All right. Now we move to the third category of items, which is rare items. Okay, rare items are yellow, and they can have 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes, as I explained. So it's up to 3 plus 3, but not necessarily. So they have to have at least 3 of them in total, otherwise they would be blue, basically. So blue items have 1 or 2 modifiers, and after 3 and more is a rare yellow item. What's going to happen here is that you can basically add modifiers up to 6, but be careful about something, is that you have double modifiers that can really make things a bit more complicated than that. So let's look at this item in particular. It has only 5 lines. So usually you would say, okay, there's 1 space left basically for to add a new modifier. But actually, if I press Alt again, I can see that there are actually 6 lines. Okay, but because some lines fall on the same kind of modifier, they get added and kind of disappear. For example, this modifier adds spell damage, which was already on the item, so it's going to make 131, and it adds mana, which was also already on the item, so it's going to make like 178. This will become, I mean, these 4 lines here will, and these 3 different modifiers will become only 2 lines, spell damage and mana. So suddenly you have the impression that something is missing. So don't be confused. Sometimes you have only 5 lines, but there are 6 modifiers on the item. On the other hand, something else can happen, that you have, again, these double modifiers. So, for example, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 lines. Okay, it has 7 lines. So you're going to tell me, how is it possible? Because you told me it was 3 plus 3 at most. But we can see again here that this one at the bottom, T3, is accuracy rating and light radius. So basically, because this item didn't have any accuracy rating or light radius, this is going to be added up, and well, this is going to be added at the end, and it will be 7 lines instead of 6. Okay, so that's something important to remember as well. I think this one has the same issue. No, this one is full. So this one is 6. It has exactly 6 modifiers. One thing to remember as well is that when you want to add modifiers, let's say there are only 4 on this item, you can check if the prefixes or suffixes are full. This is going to be important as well in crafting, because let's say, for example, let's say these boots, they don't have movement speed. Let's imagine that there are some open lines here, and I want to add movement speed. Here I could check and see that despite the fact that they have 6 lines, there is actually an open prefix. You see, it's T6 and T12, and actually there are only 2 prefix modes. So potentially I could add movement speed because it is a prefix. Okay, this item is actually not full. I can add another modifier. Okay, on the other hand, I cannot add a resistance because all the resistances are always suffixes, and I already have 3 suffixes here. So I know, for example, with this item, despite the fact that at first glance it had 6 lines, there is actually an open prefix. So I could add movement speed, but I could not add chaos resistance, for example. So that's something to learn and understand about these kind of items. Okay, it's really very important not to make mistakes. Basically, sometimes maybe you will see a great item on the ground, and you want to craft it, and you have to understand what can happen or cannot happen, because otherwise you will waste currency. Okay, so that's basically the three kinds of items. There are other kinds of items, very specific, called unique items. They are orange, like this one. Generally speaking, they behave quite differently from regular items, so I'm not going to get into that in particular today. All right. Now, if you check some items, sometimes you will notice that they have light blue lines. Let's say like this one. This one has an extra line, you know. So this one, okay, these gloves, we can see item level, quality, we can see a defense, we can see the requirements, we can see all the mods, and we can notice this line on top of it. So there are different ways to get these light blue lines. This one, for example, comes from a rune. So here, for example, I have inspiration, which on armor, it says gives 15% increased mana regeneration rate. That's why it appears here, okay? Or it could be a soul core, which are exactly like this one, but red. And this one, for example, gives 2% increased maximum mana on armor. So that's why you can see, because I have 4 of them, you can see the light blue line, 8% increased maximum mana. There are other sources as well for these lines. For example, here, you can see I have 2 light blue lines. This one, 20% of defenses is linked to my rune, but the plus 27 to spirit isn't. Where does that come from? This comes from the corruption. So again, I'm not going to get into corrupted items today. I'll make a specific video on that to explain what can happen when you corrupt an item, because many things can happen. But in this case, the corruption added what is called a corruption mod, which is this plus 27 to spirit. It could have been something else, but in this case, that's what it is. Finally, you can have a specific mod on an amulet, which is called an anoint, like on this one. So you see it will be written allocates, and that means you have added actually a passive tree talent to your amulet. For example, here I have added step like mist. If I press Alt or again and I mouse over it, it will tell me what it does. So step like mist, actually, if I go into my passive tree and I search for it, it's right here near the monk starting area, and I have managed to add this to my to anoint this on my amulet thanks to emotions. Again, I need to press Alt to inspect the item and see more information, and here I can see that I need distilled emotions, despair, ire, okay? And I see here it's blue, blue, and red, okay? So if you go to your stash, you check your emotions. For example, I would need 2 of those and 1 of this, okay? What happens is that if I put that here and I right-click on it, it's going to open a special window where I can put my amulet, for example, here, and I could put 3 emotions, and in the right order. The order is important. So it has to be, for example, despair, ire, and if I put them in another order, it's going to make something else. And here it's going to tell me what's going to happen. So you can double check before you press instill. You can double check that you are doing exactly what you want to do. All right. You can do that with amulets. You can do that with maps, but again, as usual, I won't get into maps because maps behave a bit differently. Different stuff happens, so I'll get to that again in another video. All right, so we have seen the main sources now. Well, all the sources of this light blue line, so runes and soul cores, anoints for amulets, and corruption. All right. There's one last thing I want to show you, which is jewels, because they behave a bit differently. So here you can have magic jewels. So here we see this one has only 1 suffix. I could add a prefix to it. You can have rare ones. Rare ones have only 4 lines. They can have 4 modes, not lines, sorry. They can have 4 modes. So here 2 prefix and 2 suffix. And one thing to remember is that they can also be corrupted, and then they would get these extra corruption mods. which can be extremely useful in the case of jewels. For example, here I can get +9 to dexterity, so I can get stats that can be useful to if you have some specific requirements that you can't quite reach, or if you want to stack attributes, of course. So here you can get an attribute, or you could get also a resistance, like here, +9% to fire resistance. It can help you cap your resistances. Sometimes you're only missing 5%, 6%. It's not worth changing your whole gear to manage to cap your resistance. Maybe you can just get it from a corrupted jewel. So that's also something to remember. Okay, now I would like to move on to crafting. So I'll keep it basic for the moment. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but just to show you, if you have a currency tab, you will see here that you have orbs. And I'm going to explain a bit how they work. So first of all, you can notice that you have 2 blue orbs, and they are going to interact with blue items, basically. Then you have these yellow orbs that are going to interact with yellow items, mostly. And you have this red orb, which is the corruption orb, and which adds this red corrupted line on the item. So that is linked to corruption. All right. First thing that you might not know is that if you want to craft, you can use this center box here to do it, this spot. So let's say I want to craft, I will start with this guarded helm, for example. This is a white item, right? So the first orb is the orb of transmutation, also called transmute, and it tells you that it upgrades a normal item to a magic item with 1 modifier. So it's going to add 1 modifier, and you don't know in advance whether it's going to be a prefix or a suffix. Let's do that. So to do that, I just right click on it, I click on my item, and boom, it's become a magic item. So you see here, blue title. And I got a T3, what we call a T3 life mod, which gives me +30 life. So I have a prefix, okay? The second orb is called Orb of Augmentation. It tells you it's going to, so we also call it an augment. Augments magic item with a new random modifier. All right. If I apply an augmentation, an orb of augmentation here to this item, because it already has a prefix, I know it's going to be a suffix, all right? Let's do that. So right click, left click, and indeed it's a suffix. This time I got T1 critical hit chance. So, okay. Because the item level is only 11, I could not get great tiers here anyway. So that's why they are T3 and T1. There's no surprise here. I'm going to skip the third one to go straight to the fourth one. The fourth one is called the Regal Orb. Regal Orb is going to upgrade a magic item to a rare item, so a blue item to a yellow item, and it adds 1 modifier, basically, to do so. So what's going to happen here is that if I apply this Regal Orb to my helmet, it's going to turn yellow, and I'm going to get a new mod, but I don't know if it's a prefix or a suffix, so this will be just RNG, as we say, random number generator, you know, basically random. Let's do that. And what do we get? We get 9% increased rarity of items found. Actually, rarity of items found is a really good example because it could be a prefix or it could be a suffix. That's one of those rare mods that could be in both pools, basically. So here I really have to, again, check with Alt to inspect the item to see that I got a prefix. All right, good. Okay. That's for these 3 items. So you turn a white item into a blue one by adding 1 mod. Here you add a second mod to your magic item, and then you turn it into a rare. Okay, that's a typical thing to do. Now, what I could have done as well is use an orb of alchemy. So this one upgrades a normal item to a rare, and it gives it straight away 4 modifiers. So that's really a good way to quickly add modifiers to an item and to see what happens. Typically, in the end game, you're going to do that with maps because then you get 4 mods directly, which can be pretty useful. I could also use a base like this, Let's do it. Doesn't matter. So you see, even if it looks bigger, actually, it's still going to fit in this little box. And it's so far it's white, and boom, it's yellow, and I got 4 modifiers. All right. So now I can quickly assess whether this item has any chance to be good or not, or if I can just get rid of it. Well, in this case, looks like I can get rid of it. All right. Now we get to the Chaos Orb. So the Chaos Orb, you're probably not going to use it that often, especially in the beginning. It removes a random modifier and augments a rare item with a new random modifier. So it has to be a rare item, first of all. You cannot do it on anything else. And it's just going to remove basically one of the lines and to one of the mods, and to add another mod. So let's do it here. It doesn't matter. So here I had physical lightning and lightning damage. I had critical damage bonus and leech. If I do that, it has removed the lightning damage and it has replaced it by accuracy rating. Okay, doesn't matter. So usually, why would you do that? If you have an item which is really nice, for example, it has 5 mods that are really great, but the last one is not, and that kind of ruins the item, because in the end game, when you really push things, you really want to have 6 good mods on your item. Maybe you try your luck with a Chaos Orb and you see what happens. All right. Vaal Orb, as I explained, is you can corrupt an item. I won't get into more explanation about that today. It will be for later. Exalted Orb, it says augments a rare item with a new random modifier. So it's going to add 1 mod to a rare item. So that's usually how you feel, as we say, the item. Let's say your rare item has only 4 mods. You can add 1 or 2. So here, for example, we saw that these boots have only 5 mods, despite having 6 lines. So we can just add an exalted 1 mod with an exalted orb. Also, we also call it to slam it or to exalt it. Up, and I got 71% increase in energy shield. It had to be a prefix because all the suffix were full. I had already 3 resistances, so it has to be a prefix, and I got this. Which one did I get actually? Yeah, I got this one. I got 31% increase in energy shield, and because I had already 40%, it made 71%. All right. Good. Next one is Divine Orb. So this is a very famous orb because it's the most expensive one. And it says randomizes the numeric values of modifiers on an item. One thing to understand before you make a mistake, because this is very valuable, is that it is not going to change the tiers on the item. So it's only going to change the value within the existing tiers. So it will not really make the item better in a way. Typically, you won't be using that on rare items. Why? Because if you look at a rare item like this one, what happens is that, as you can see, the ranges are pretty small, you know. So this one is actually the largest of all, and it's only a difference of 14 mana. This one, it's within 2% of, and so on and so forth. And this one is fixed. This one will stay +4 lightning spell skills. It will never move to +5, for example. So as you can see here, it's like 3 points of intelligence, 3 points of increased cast speed, 3 points of extra fire damage. It's really minimal. There's little sense for me to use a Divine Orb on this, because I'm basically going to get exactly the same item as before, you know, within a very small difference. What you typically use Divine Orb on are these kind of items, unique items. For example, this one, you can see that, well, this one you really want it for the suffix, so for the second line here, for the second mode here. And it goes from 40 to 80, which is a huge difference. And you might want to spend a few divines on it to try to roll closer to 80%. Okay, this late in the league, when I'm talking to you right now, you probably wouldn't do that because this item is quite cheap, let's say. But earlier on, going from 50 to 77 would be like a 20 divine orb difference. So you would maybe try your luck with, you roll it, as we say, a few times, 2, 3, 4 times, and you try to get a better result, okay? Now, Orb of Annulment removes a random modifier from an item. It removes it completely at random. So this is very, how to say that? That's very, very random, basically. You really don't know at all what's going to happen. It works a little bit like a Chaos Orb, but there are some differences, which is really, I would say, advanced crafting. This you probably won't use very much, to be honest. Orb of Chance is it's a funny one. So you start from a normal item, so a white item like this. And if you spend an Orb of Chance on it, it's going to either upgrade it to a unique item of the same base, or destroy it. That's it. So it just, you try your luck. So I don't know if I have something here where I could use that on basis, maybe. I have some utility belt. Well, utility belt is not really going to help me here. I thought I had a sapphire ring somewhere. Yeah, I have a sapphire ring somewhere. Well, it could give me a dream fragment, for example, which is a very rare, unique item worth many divines, or more probably, because the probability is very low, it's going to give me nothing. So, the item has disappeared, as you can see. That's what's going to happen most of the time, to be honest. But it could have turned it into a unique item. The last part here, which is empty, and is going to stay empty in my case for the foreseeable future, is for the Mirror of Kalandra, which is a very famous item in the world of Path of Exile, which allows you to duplicate an item. So if you find somebody who has a great item, you can use this to duplicate it. Yeah, you're probably not going to see this anytime soon. If you're lucky enough to drop one, just know that it's worth a lot. So don't think hard before you do anything with it, basically. Maybe you will want to sell it for divine orbs to get a great build. Maybe you will want to use it, but you will have to think hard and long on what. Okay, so I think I've given you an overview now of how the items work in Path of Exile 2, how the basic crafting works with orbs. One last little tip: you can press Shift when you have an item like this to compare it immediately with the one that is currently equipped on your gear. So that can be useful, that can be practical. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this content, maybe support my channel by subscribing to it. That would be nice. And I'll see you soon for another video. Bye bye.